Welcome to New York's #2 sports show. The Rangers lose to the Ottawa Senators by a final score of 2-1, but that does not tell the story. So it's Mika Zibanejad's 1,000th NHL game, which ironically occurs against Ottawa. We'll talk about that, but the Rangers are only able to generate 9 shots on goal all game, which ties the franchise record, where in 1955 against the Detroit Red Wings, they also only had 9 shots on goal. Pretty remarkable. But this is a season where we've seen a lot of this type of shit from them, and it happens at home, of course. But I mean, they only had 4 shots on goal through 2 periods. 2 shots in the first, 2 in the second, and then they're able to put up 5 in the third, which is impressive for this team. But second game of back-to-back. Now, what is it? 1-10-1 in their 12 games in the second of a back-to-back. We saw in the most recent one where they lost to Columbus, 1-10-1 now, which again speaks volumes as far as just because really not only the Rangers not good, but the effort is just terrible. It is. And look, I'm very pleased. It was way closer. I would have been wearing, for yesterday's game against Winnipeg, for them to get the 1 point, I could accept that. If the Rangers got 1 point in this game, I would have not been happy at all, just because you didn't even come close to deserving it. And the fact that it came down to the wire is kind of remarkable. Igor Shesterkin was very good. He made 31 saves on 33 shots, a lot of them high quality. I expected Ottawa to win. I had said that, where Ottawa is desperate for playoffs. They're playing well. They're a good team. I mean, for them, where their issue is right now is on defense. We're going into the game. And that's the thing, too, what makes it more embarrassing for the Rangers. Ottawa is very thin on defense when Jake Sanderson was out, Dennis Gilbert, Nick Jensen, and in this game, Thomas Chabot only played in the first period. He took a cross-check from J.T. Miller at the end of the first period and did not return. Excuse me. And apparently he's going to be out for a while, as well as defenseman Lassie Thompson. He got hurt in the second period, too, and apparently Travis Green said that he's going to be out for a while. So that's a bit of an issue for Ottawa, but if they're able to, again, I don't know the prognosis as far as Sanderson, for example, who obviously is a very good defenseman, but they're playing good hockey. Like, they're a team that, if you take that aside, right, but it is important, I do see them making the playoffs. I think Ottawa looks like they're playing really, really well. And, they very much dominated the Rangers. Where they let the Rangers off the hook was, and even though they got a power play goal, they went 1 for 7 on the power play. That is where they just didn't really do a whole lot. So many opportunities, but couldn't quite put the game away. But yeah, the Rangers, that first period was so bad. And I've been saying this, where the Ranger first periods, it's a matter of they don't get anything going, right? Sometimes in the first periods, they don't allow much, right? But even in those games, like the Rangers, as far as shots on goal in the first period per game, have got to be towards the lowest in the NHL, and especially at home, right? That I'm more confident in. I mean, so many times it's in the single digits. And, it's just when you combine lack of effort and not having skill, this is what you get. And it's really the top end players that are the ones that are the biggest culprits to me as far as the lack of effort. And I guess that shouldn't be a surprise for many reasons. But yeah, the Trocheks, the Foxes, the Millers, right? It is really where you see, bad penalties, turnovers, just things that just can't happen. And as well, you have players just in the sun that's just, again, are playing way more than they should. Really, I mean, some of them are bad players. I mean, Connor Mackey, for example, Connor Mackey's great for the tank. I'll tell you that. I mean, he did a terrible job on the second goal that Ottawa scored. And just, look, I think Drew Fortescue, he wasn't in the lineup in this game. And I'm not surprised by that. I would think, the next game against Toronto, I would think he gets in there. If not then Chicago on Friday. One of the two, you will see him in there. So if nothing else, at least you're seeing, like, I'd rather see Fortescue fuck up than Connor Mackey. Although again, like I said, Connor, if you want the Rangers to lose games, you want Connor Mackey in the lineup because again, he is terrible. And he showed that in this one. Um, the one, so a couple of things as far as the lineup. The one switch as far as last game to this game was Johnny Brodzinski, a healthy scratch. You saw Parson back in there. Look, pick your poison. Parson has not looked very good. I mean, I guess the fourth line was actually okay, but he took a delay game penalty. Like, I feel like when he's played, he's been taking penalties. He took a delay game penalty in this one, played less than 7 minutes. Um, and in game, they demoted. I think this move was made after the second period. Taylor Radish was on the Trocheck line, but he moved down and they moved up Yaroslav Hamelash. I kind of agree with that, to be honest with you. I feel like Hamelash has looked again in a bit role. Like, I've noticed him for positive reasons. And Taylor Radish took a penalty. I didn't think he looked good. I think that was actually deserved. But really, all to say, Mike Sullivan, like I just it's not his fault, but I don't think he's the answer. I really, really don't. He's dealing with a tough situation for sure. Um, and I think that he really has his work cut out for him, but I don't know. I understand some of the when they are right, the defensive structure is there for this team, but even that falls a little bit short as well. And they just don't generate offense at all. And this was a guy, Mike Sullivan. Look, fair or unfair, like in those last years of the Penguins, there just wasn't a lot to show. And I know it's not just him. I keep on saying that, but I think you have to include him in this picture with of course Chris Drury, Mike Sullivan, the team. It's everyone, and I'm not trying to use the players because they are the number one culprit slash Chris Drury, but I think Sullivan. I just want to see, and I know there aren't that many options, but I would like to see more of the kids and prospects get more of a chance. I'm not saying there's many of them. And I'll even acknowledge that, like, the goal scorer, Connor Sherry, he actually has been decent lately. And that kind of bothers me in the sense that I think there's a real chance that Connor Sherry's back next year. Which, look, it's going to be a minimum contract, right? That's not my issue. But, and it's nothing against Sherry. Like, he tries, right? Like, which we can't say about everyone. But, so I get that on the one hand, right? You do want to have players play that deserve to play, and they deserve to play, but it doesn't do much. The one guy lately who you can really feel good about, who is still relatively young, to be exact, he is 24 years old, turning 25 in about a month, is Ty Cartier, who yet again gets a point. He gets an assist. Like, he really is making his mark and playing pretty well. And it seemed to me in this game, as far as an ice time perspective, that the Miller line is playing a little bit more, and the Trocheck line is playing a little bit less than they had been. Nothing that noticeable, and it's a little bit tough with all the penalties and power plays and stuff. It's a little bit with the ice time. It gets a little bit tough to decipher. Um, but lost in all of this, and to me, deservedly so. Not because of anything against the manager, but to me, I'm more interested with what happens on the ice. But what happened before the game was Mika Zibanejad was celebrated for his 1,000th NHL game. The Rangers really went all out for this one. They had these Mika shirts where instead of I and K in his name, it was 1K for 1,000 games. They had a nice video tribute where his wife narrated it. Look, I was lucky enough to be at Zibanejad's 5-goal game. About less than a week before COVID in March of 2020 against the Capitals. That was probably, it'll go down as definitely one of the more special games that I'll have ever gone to at Madison Square Garden. And Zibanejad was unbelievable that night, and really has been the most consistent, one of the most consistent players on this team this year. A bad year. And look, there's been some games where he hasn't been good, of course, right? He is part of it, but Zibanejad really has done as well as he can under the circumstances, and you can feel proud about him in this current moment, right? If this had been a year plus ago, the celebration's still there, but maybe it feels a little bit different, whereas the timing is right on this one. So that was a big part of this game. And just the fact that they couldn't, because you as a player, I'm sure you want to win it for Zibanejad in some ways. And the fact that they couldn't really give anything, I'm not surprised by it, but it is pretty pathetic. It is. At this part of the year, you don't have the motivations are not for a team like the Rangers. There isn't much, but you think that that one maybe could have been right. So win for your teammate who really has been a cornerstone of this organization for the last decade, and they were not able to do that. So the goalie matchup is Igor Shesterkin versus James Reimer. Look, Reimer was not tested. Reimer, makes 8 saves on 9 shots. One of the easier games he'll have had in his career. And Shesterkin was really, really dialed in. Coming off of a tough game against Columbus, where it really wasn't his fault, but he gives up in that game. What was it, 5 goals? So he was raring to go and really played well. I would say that there's one goal he wants to have back. The other one wasn't his fault. We'll talk about that. That's just my opinion, kind of on looking at it. So again, Ottawa has been one of the hottest teams in the NHL. They're after this win, they're 14-3-2 in the last 19 games. They're making things interesting in that Eastern Conference playoff race. And I think the shot count at the very least was 10-0 before the Rangers. It was either 10-0 or 11-0 before the Rangers got their first shot on goal deep into the first period. And 4:59 in, it's Taylor Radish hooking Drake Batherson. And look, I feel bad as far as, Taylor Radish and, his father passed away. Like, I really feel bad about that. But while acknowledging that, he's under contract next year. I would like for Taylor Radish to not be a Ranger next year. I mean, if he is, it's not the end of the world. But I think that, he's an okay player, but he's not particular. There's just not a whole lot there that stands out in a positive way regarding Taylor Radish. And I don't think he's been playing all that well lately. So he hooks Drake Batherson, and Ottawa, I believe it was the second unit, scores. At 6:30, Shane Pinto, Long Island native, scores his 19th goal of the season from Claude Giroux and Spence to, again, give the Senators that 1-0 lead. And this was one where, some nice passing by Ottawa, and, Pinto is open in the slot, takes a quick shot, and it goes past Shesterkin. And Shesterkin made a lot of good saves before this and a lot of good saves after this. I do think that it must have caught him off guard. It goes through his legs. I do think it's one that Igor probably wants to have back. Again, he was great, but if there was one criticism, that was one that I think he would tell you that he could have stopped. But it is the goal by Shane Pinto on the power play to give Ottawa a 1-0 lead. Ottawa really, like I said, totally controlled the first period. Shots on goal were 13-2 in the first and second, right? So 26-4 through 2 periods, which is just insane. But as far as penalties go, at 15:29, Nick Cousins, high six, Will Borgen. Rangers don't score on the power play, and then 18:03, Parson, delay of game. So the rest of that first period was not a power play in which they don't score. We go to the second, and at the end of that period is where Miller cross-checks Shabbat, and Shabbat was out for the rest of the game and will be out for the foreseeable future. And just to show you how important Shabbat is, he played 10 minutes and 21 seconds in that first period. So he was destined to go close to 30 minutes of ice time, depending on the way this game went. So give a lot of credit to the 4 defensemen that really stepped up in a big way, which was Clevin, Spence, Zub, and Montepallo, who all of them, played a lot of minutes because they were just rolling 4 defensemen because Lassie Thompson got hurt early in the second period. Speaking of the second period, at 6:46, Ottawa gets a 2-0 lead. It's Warren Foegele scoring his 12th goal of the season from Lars Eller. And this was one where Fox is caught deep, but Connor Mackey gets back to it and just backhands it off the boards right to Lars Eller. Foegele was the one that forced the bad play by Mackey. And so it's a great play by Foegele where Eller is able to find him open, and it's a one-time goal where I believe Hamelosh was trying to get back but was unable. Mackey couldn't break up the pass, and Hamelosh, it wasn't his fault. He tried to get back but couldn't, and then it just, Foegele just kind of slam dunk goal. Whereas Shesterkin goes from right to left and can't do anything about it. But again, Connor Mackey, he has to know that he can't go there. He has to basically rim it around the boards. behind Shesterkin because there's probably a little more coverage there. Instead, he just quickly, pressured, gives it right to Lars Eller and it makes it 2-0. Um, and believe it or not, that was Ottawa's last goal of the game. It felt like, Ottawa scored 8 goals on January 14th against the Rangers. They were capable of scoring a lot more than two, but that was all they would get. And it's 7:02, JT, and where they could have made it 3-0. JT Miller, double minor for high sticking Artem Zub. It's the stuff like that. And JT Miller was very critical of the team at the end of the game, and that's all well and good, but like he is part of the problem, a huge part of the problem. And Rangers do kill off that 4-minute power play. Then at 13:41, Ottawa is called for 2-minute man on the ice, to which the Rangers don't score on that power play. And then you get more Ranger penalties. At 17:21, it's another delay of game. It's Connor Mackey, but Ottawa doesn't score. And then in 1916, Vincent Trocheck, and he wasn't done, so I'm not going to bring up Trocheck now. He trips Shane Pinto at 1916. And so there was a little bit of a 5-on-3 for like 5 seconds, but the Rangers kill it all off. Then at 3:27, Artem Zub of the third period slashes JT Miller. And I think Ottawa was pissed off at Miller from the Shabbat thing. So there's a little bit of that going on, but the Rangers don't score. However, soon thereafter at 7:03, it's Connor Sherry, who's been pretty good lately, to be fair to him, scores his fourth goal of the season from Cartier and Robertson. So Robertson is able to bank a pass off the boards, and Cartier just goes in and takes the puck to the net. Does a great job of driving the defenseman, and he's able to get it right to Connor Sherry. It's just a great play by Cartier. Again, that has been lately the most successful line, whether it was Lob in the middle or now JT Miller, with Cartier and Sherry on the wings. It's been good, and Cartier has been an absolute bright spot for this team. It was a good pickup and someone that I'm looking forward to seeing next season. So it makes it 2-1 with about 13 minutes left. A lot of time remaining. But then eventually at 15:54, but with Ottawa still very much controlling play. Zibanejad did have some chances. Gabe Perreault set him up a couple of times. So Zibanejad in his 1,000th game, he, I believe, led the Rangers with the 9 shots on goal. I believe 3 of them were Zibanejad. He was the only one that had more than a shot on goal. No one had 2, but Zibanejad had 3. Um, but at 15:54, it would be a Vincent Trocheck double minor for high sticking Montempalo, but they also called Montempalo for unsportsmanlike conduct. I don't understand why. That was a legitimate 4-minute high sticking on Trocheck. Trocheck had a chance to score, didn't, and then got frustrated and just whacked him right in the face neck area. And Montempalo, I don't know how Montempalo gets on sportsmanlike conduct, and I'm not. It's not even worth me diving into. I was thinking, well, I mean, I guess Trocheck, Ottawa would have probably for the rest of the game, but I don't think the refs are thinking that deep into it. I think for whatever reason, they just genuinely gave Montempalo sort of, I guess they thought that he embellished. I don't agree with that at all. But for Vincent Trocheck, he's really been, when you think about it, one of the worst, when they didn't trade him, and I'm thinking, and there's still some truth that Trocheck still does help in a lot of ways. Like they missed his face-off ability at the end of the game because he was out range. So to fast forward, Ottawa doesn't come close. It was a very conservative power play for Ottawa. They don't score it. So the Rangers essentially have about 1.5 to 2 minutes with the goalie pulled, the 6-on-5. But Trocheck was in the box still, right? Trocheck was basically essentially in the box until, the way it was he got the penalty with a little more than 4 minutes left. And the next time he'd be able to come on was when there'd be, if somehow there was a stoppage with less than 5 seconds left, he could have come on. Ironically, there was a stoppage with about 7 seconds left. So he still was in the box. But, just Trocheck, they don't trade him. And really, he's taking, I mean, I've been talking about this forever, where he takes so many penalties. And I know his line mates are pretty shitty. They are, right? I mean, he's been playing with Will Cooley a lot. Will Cooley has done nothing for a while. When you really think about it, Will Cooley's done nothing. And that combination with Trocheck and Cooley does not work at all. It just doesn't, right? Like, this manager line, that line has cooled off, but you can see what they're going for there, and they have had their success. And whether it was Laba or Miller with Sherry and Cartier, you got something there. But the Trocheck line consistently has been bad. Again, it is what it is there, but for Vincent Trocheck, I don't want that value to drop. I don't think it will drop, but I am still a proponent of absolutely trading him at the, over the summer. And, that's just, I think he's going to get worse and worse. Part of it, I think, is him being checked out. I do, which isn't an excuse, but I think that's just the reality of the situation. But Vincent Trocheck, Um, Again, I want them to lose games, so I was kind of wrong in thinking, oh, well, Trocheck's on the team still. The Rangers are going to win more. And in some ways, like I said, he does help in certain areas, but he's a negative in a lot of ways too, right? As long as JT Miller's playing, as long as Trocheck playing, again, Adam Fox has been really terrible lately. So it's a lot of the high end guys, or quote unquote high end guys, that are a big part of the reason as to why they're doing poorly. And that was kind of in some ways the case early in the year too, for different reasons. Where my biggest criticism, yes, this team really lacks much depth at all, for sure, but your core is not good enough. So the Rangers don't score. Ottawa is able to hold on for the 2-1 win. Um, and so, Rangers do not deserve a point. They don't get a point. And it's 9 shots on goal, ties the franchise low, where they also had 9 shots on goal in 1955. Just, ridiculous stuff. It's Mika Zibanejad's 1,000th NHL game against his former team at home. And that's what they do. And Ottawa was by far the more desperate team, and it showed. So now the next few games are interesting. The Rangers now play Toronto. And by the way, the Rangers currently do sit at the number 2 spot, which would be, if they can get there, that'd be great. Because in a worst case scenario, you're basically going to have the 4th pick. In a worst case scenario, right? More likely, you may be finishing maybe 3rd if you don't win the lottery. So would love to be there, but it's going to be close. And I think the teams that, not just like Chicago and Calgary right now are the most important teams, but I think if I'm going to take it a little bit of a step further, St. Louis, Winnipeg, and Toronto as well. And the next 2 games are at Toronto and then home against Chicago. The Chicago one's going to be a massive one. The unfortunate thing in both cases is that when the Rangers play Toronto and Chicago, both teams will have played the night before, for what it is worth. Toronto will have played at Boston the night before we played Toronto, and then Chicago will have played at the Flyers. But in sticking with the Leaf game, they've been struggling really badly lately. Austin Matthews is out for the season. Last time the Rangers played the Leafs, they had Austin Matthews, and the Rangers won that game. That Ranger game broke a long streak. The Rangers won a regulation at home, and that broke a very long streak, but they had not done so since that St. Louis game back in November. And I'm trying to think since then, as far as regulation home wins, I want to say that the only one since that point might have been the Calgary game, unless I'm forgetting one, but I don't believe so. So yeah, it's just, there is a legitimate chance the Rangers might win this game, but things have been very good for Tank lately. Rangers are 0-5-1 in the last 5 games, after they had won 4 in a row. So hope the losses continue, but it gets interesting from a head-to-head standpoint. More so Chicago than Toronto, but I do include Toronto, like I said, in, let's call it, 5 teams? See, I think it was about 5. Yes, about 5. And not to say that there aren't some other teams that could maybe take a tumble as well, but I'll trust that the Rangers are bad enough that I don't need to include, like the Kraken and the Panthers. The Rangers actually play the Panthers. The interesting thing is that the Rangers' next 4 games are against teams that don't have any playoff aspirations. So you just don't know in games like that. Toronto, Chicago, Florida, and the Devils are the Rangers' next 4 games. Right? Then they start to play teams that do have playoff hopes. So we'll see what happens. 11 games to go. Rangers 9-18-7 at home, which is just absolutely bonkers. And we'll see what happens here. But an embarrassing night at Madison Square Garden shouldn't surprise many people, but it is, almost humorous at this point, just the lows that they reach. And this one was getting 9 shots on goal the entire game. Outshot 33-9 by Ottawa. Final score 2-1 on Mika Zibanejad's 1,000th NHL game. And now the Rangers will hit the road to take on the Toronto Maple Leafs.